There's a quiet epidemic silently sweeping through the lives of modern men. It doesn't scar the skin like a wound, nor does it show up on any medical scan or blood test, but it erodes from the inside out. It's the deep, compulsive need to be liked, to be accepted, to appear harmless. From an early age, you were conditioned to lower your gaze, wear a polite smile, and nod in agreement, not because it felt right, but because it felt safe, and with every silent nod, every smile you forced, every yes you uttered when your heart screamed no, something vital within you withered.
Ow, man.
That moment marks the first death of a man, not the death of his body, but the death of his edge, the fire, the raw essence of what makes him a force to be reckoned with. In that quiet surrender, you stopped being a man and became a pet predictable, tail wagging, not from joy, but from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being left out, dismissed, or unloved. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago, a wise man must learn how not to be good when the situation requires it. Why? Because in a world where power writes the rules, virtue without strength is nothing more than a leash.
Oh.
The world doesn't love the tame dog, it tolerates him. It celebrates his loyalty when it's convenient, punishes his defiance when he dares to resist, and when his usefulness ends. When his tail stops wagging, he is replaced quietly, quickly, without honor. The real tragedy isn't found in his kindness, but in the illusion he clings to, the delusion that being harmless earns him love, that loyalty guarantees protection, that obedience leaves a legacy. But reality is far more brutal. Life doesn't reward the agreeable, it rewards the dangerous, the capable. The man who can smile with warmth, yet never bend the knee. So let me ask you, are you truly living like a man, or just surviving like a dog? If you've ever silenced your truth just to keep the peace, if you've ever mistaken begging for love as real connection, if you've ever felt invisible, despite always doing what's expected, then it's time to stop. It's time to stop the performance. Time to kill the dog inside you, because the world will tame you, use you, then discard you without a second glance. But the wolf?
Oh.
He doesn't ask to be remembered. He becomes unforgettable. And if you feel that stirring in your chest, something raw, primal, ancient, don't push it down. Like this message, not for me, but for yourself. To mark the moment you stopped kneeling. Subscribe not just to follow, but to join a movement of men who choose clarity over comfort, edge over approval, and power over praise. This isn't just content. It's a call to rebirth. Let the wolf rise. You weren't raised to lead, you were conditioned to obey from the very beginning. Childhood, every environment around, use, cool, home, society, rewarded you not for thinking, but for following. You were praised for being agreeable, punished subtly or overtly every time you resisted. You were taught to be kind, to be helpful, to say yes, even when everything in your body screamed no. Over time, and almost without realizing it, they carved obedience into your spine. Not strength, not self-respect, not strategic power, just predictability, just compliance. And here's the brutal truth no one dares to tell you. This world doesn't reward loyalty. It exploits it. It doesn't honor the obedient. It forgets them the moment they outlive their usefulness. The system isn't built to create warriors. It's designed to raise workers, not creators, but dependents, not leaders, but followers. Men who ask for permission before speaking and apologize for wanting more than their assigned role. And once that training settles in, it shows you stop acting. On instinct, you start second-guessing. You hesitate. You shrink. You fade. And that's when the real death begins. Not the death of your body, but the death of your edge, the death of initiative, the erosion of your masculine presence. A quiet collapse that no one notices, but you feel every day. Machiavelli didn't write for men like that. He didn't write for the agreeable, the pleasant, the submissive. He wrote for rulers' men who see the world not as a place of fairness, but as a battlefield of power and perception. A stage where predators wear suits, where ambition is hidden behind handshakes and smiles. In this world, those who bow are stepped, and in those who stand are feared. Look around you, the workplace. Who climbs fastest? Is it the man who stays late, never complains, gives everything and asks for nothing? Or the one who knows when to say no, who sets boundaries, who speaks with weight and walks with presence? You already know. The man who bends to every need, gives endlessly, sacrifices himself to be chosen. Or the one who knows his worth, who doesn't chase, who can walk away without hesitation. Again, the answer is clear. Brutal, yes, but truth doesn't ask for comfort. It demands clarity. This world doesn't respect kindness. It doesn't crave availability. It doesn't reward obedience. It honors scarcity. It kneels to power. The nice guy may be applauded in theory, but in reality, he is discarded. Why? Because he was trained not to protect, but to please. And when life turns into war weather, emotional, professional, or personal, a man who cannot bite is nothing but background noise. That's what you've become. A man raised to serve, not to defend. A man trained to be liked, not respected. And when real tension shows up, you freeze. You panic. You collapse inward. Not because you're weak, but because no one ever taught you how to be dangerous. Comfort raised you. Fear governs you. Shame silences you. But it doesn't have to end. Here, if something inside you is cracking, if you're tired of folding, tired of nodding, tired of apologizing just for existing, then it's time to remember what they tried so hard to erase. You were not born to be small. You were not built to stay silent. You were never meant to live. Your life just trying to be agreeable. Like this message, if you're ready to unlearn their conditioning and let the wolf rise. You weren't raised to lead. You were conditioned to obey from the very beginning. From childhood, every environment. Around you, school, home, society, rewarded you not for thinking, but for following. You were praised for being agreeable, punished subtly or overtly every time you resisted. You were taught to be kind, to be helpful, to say yes, even when everything in your body screamed no. Over time, and almost without realizing it, they carved obedience into your spine. Not strength, not self-respect, not strategic power, just predictability, just compliance. And here's the brutal truth no one dares to tell you. This world doesn't reward loyalty. It exploits it. It doesn't honor the obedient. Out. It forgets them the moment they outlive their usefulness. The system isn't built to create warriors. It's designed to raise workers, not creators, but dependents. Not leaders, but followers. Men who ask for permission before speaking and apologize for wanting more than their assigned role. And once that training settles in, it shows. You stop acting on instinct. You start second-guessing. You hesitate. You shrink. You fade. And that's when the real death begins. Not the death of your body, but the death of your edge, the death of initiative, the erosion of your masculine presence. A quiet collapse that no one notices, but you feel every day. Machiavelli didn't write for men like that. He didn't write for the agreeable, the pleasant, the submissive. He wrote for rulers, men who see the world not as a place of fairness, but as a battlefield of power and perception. A stage where predators wear suits, where ambition is hidden behind handshakes and smiles in this world. Those who bow are stepped on, and those who stand are feared. Look around you. In the workplace, who climbs fastest? Is it the man who stays late, never complains, gives everything and asks for nothing? Or the one who knows when to say no, who sets boundaries, who speaks with weight and walks with presence? You already know. And in love, who is truly desired? The man who bends to every need, gives endlessly, sacrifices himself to be chosen. Or the one who knows his worth, who doesn't chase, who can walk away without hesitation. Again, the answer is clear. Brutal, yes, but truth doesn't ask for comfort. It demands clarity. This world doesn't respect kindness. It doesn't crave availability. It doesn't reward obedience. It honors scarcity. It kneels to power. So a nice guy may be applauded in theory, but in reality, he is discarded. Why? Because he was trained not to protect, but to please. And when life turns into war, whether emotional, professional, or personal, a man who cannot bite is nothing but background noise. That's what you've become. A man raised to serve, not to defend. A man trained to be liked, not respected. And when real tension shows up, you freeze, you panic, you collapse inward. Not because you're weak, but because no one ever taught you how to be dangerous. Comfort raised you, fear governs you, shame silences you. But it doesn't have to end here. If something inside you is cracking, if you're tired of folding, tired of nodding, tired of apologizing just for existing, then it's time to remember what they tried so hard to erase. You were not born to be small. You were not built to stay silent. You were never meant to live your life just trying to be agreeable. Like this message, if you're ready to unlearn their conditioning and subscribe, not because you need another opinion, but because you're finally building your own. That's how real change begins. Not by blindly absorbing more voices, but by sharpening your own. By opening your eyes and seeing the system exactly for what it is, and making the conscious decision to never let it define you again, refusing to stay. Confined within it is the first act of rebellion. That's where the awakening starts. There is a word more dangerous than betrayal. It's more seductive than love, and more effective at keeping men in invisible chains than any army or king ever could. That word is loyalty. You were raised to believe. That loyalty is virtue, that it makes you honorable, that it defines a good man. You were told loyalty means strength, discipline, integrity, but no one told you the other side of the truth. Loyalty, when offered without power, is nothing more than a disguised form of slavery. When you are loyal without leverage, what you're really doing is fastening a leash around your own neck. And worse still, when that loyalty is placed in the hands of the wrong person, the wrong system, the wrong cause, it becomes your downfall. A death sentence dressed as devotion. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He understood what most men are still too afraid to admit. Rulers do not admire loyalty because it is noble. They admire it because it is useful. A loyal man is predictable. He is controllable. He does not resist. He is easy to manage, unlikely to rebel, the perfect pawn in someone else's game. And exactly that is what the world wants from you. Your employer wants you loyal, yet underpaid. Your partner may want you loyal, yet voiceless. Your leaders want you loyal, but blind. The moment you stop being convenient, the instant you challenge the system, or ask a question you're not supposed to ask, you're not seen as loyal anymore. You're seen as dangerous, because loyalty was never about you. It was always about them, their comfort, their dominance, their control. And you were just the insurance policy, the safety net, the silent soldier. They'll call you a good man. They'll celebrate your discipline, your consistency, your sacrifice. They'll hang symbols of praise on your chest just before discarding you to the wolves. So you have to ask yourself, and ask honestly, who exactly are you being loyal to? A system that drains you until there's nothing left? A relationship that manipulates and shames you? A job that replaces you the second you speak up or step out of line? Be honest, not polite. Are you truly loyal, or are you afraid? Afraid of starting over, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being alone. So you stay, you endure, you bend, you shrink, you break again and again, all in the name of honor. But let's be real, it's not honor, it's fear. Fear dressed in the costume of virtue, and it is killing you slowly, because a man who cannot walk away from what no longer serves him will never rise, will stay stuck, stay small, stay forgotten. History does not remember the loyal. It remembers the victors, the adaptable.
Ow.
Men who had the courage to shift allegiance, to let go, to walk away, to burn the old flag and plant their own. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must be both a lion and a fox," meaning he must know when to roar and when to disappear, when to fight and when to maneuver, when to stand firm and when to vanish without warning. So don't hand out your loyalty like a free gift. Treat it like a sacred loan with terms, with limits, with boundaries, and retain the right to revoke it the moment it begins to cost you your soul. Be loyal only to those who would bleed for you, to causes that still have integrity, to missions that still have a future, to principles that don't change with the wind. But, above all, be loyal to yourself, to your instincts, to your dignity, to your rise. Because when your loyalty becomes inconvenient, the world will discard you without hesitation. Hesitation. That moment of pause, of doubt, that's where your power slips away. So stop confusing loyalty with morality. Stop dressing up your silence as strength. And for your own sake, stop waiting for applause just because you endured quietly. There's no medal for obedience, no trophy for swallowing your truth. If this truth cut deep, then don't just scroll past like this message. Let it be the moment you reclaim your loyalty, not loyalty to systems or to people who drain you, but to yourself. Subscribe not out of obedience, not because you were told to, but as a declaration. Your loyalty now belongs to the man you're becoming, because in this world, only the loyal wolf survives, calculated, and always ready to walk alone. If he must, let's make something brutally clear. Being liked is not power. It's comfort. A temporary cushion made of approval that slowly suffocates your sharpness, your instinct, your presence. Being liked makes you nice but forgettable, keeps you visible but never respected. Because the man obsessed with being liked will endlessly shapeshift to fit the room. He'll water himself down, mute his convictions, soften his stance until one day wakes up wondering why no one listens when he speaks. Why his voice is background noise in a world that only respects presence. Machiavelli didn't write for men like that. He didn't waste words on the agreeable, the polite, or the ever-smiling people-pleasers. He wrote for the ones who command. And command doesn't come from charm, it comes from presence. Real presence doesn't chase approval, doesn't beg to be noticed, doesn't smile just to earn space. It sits still, it watches, it waits. And when the moment comes, it doesn't strike with noise, it strikes with energy. You've felt this before, haven't you? A man walks into a room, and suddenly the air changes. People lower their voices. They watch their words not because he's loud, but because he might not be. That's the power of perceived danger. Not the danger of chaos, but the danger of calm. The kind of calm that says, I don't need to prove anything, but don't test me. A man who speaks little, but can do much. A man who doesn't seek peace, but holds it. Because no one dares to disrupt his gravity, Machiavelli knew. It is safer to be feared than to be loved, if one cannot be both. And why is that? Because love is conditional, fades the moment. Expectations go unmet. But fear remains. Fear governs behavior. Fear creates boundaries before you even open your mouth. Yet today's man is told the opposite. Be soft, be endlessly available, be kind, no matter what. And then he wonders why he's overlooked, why his kindness feels invisible, why his voice carries no weight, why his presence doesn't change a room. Here's the brutal truth. You trained them to ignore you. You taught them that you'll take the disrespect. You'll say sorry just for being there. That the moment pressure comes, you'll fold. And once people stop fearing the cost of crossing you, you lose every ounce of leverage. But here's the shift. You don't need to be cruel. You don't need to be loud. What you need is to become a man capable of destruction, but who chooses not to destroy. Because true danger isn't a bark. It's a calm that signals don't push me. The dog barks because it's afraid. The wolf watches, waits. And when he moves with finality. Doesn't repeat himself. That right there, that's the difference between being heard and being remembered. You don't want to be liked. You want to be NIGNOABLE. That's what you must become. A presence so defined, so felt, that it shifts the room without needing to raise a single word. You want people to adjust when you enter, not because you demand it, but because they instinctively know. You don't have to declare boundaries when they're carved into your energy. Even if unspoken, there are lines and they will not be crossed. And if your name holds no weight when you're not in the room, then your presence holds no weight when you are. That's the brutal truth. So stop chasing validation. Stop seeking applause from those who don't value your essence. Start building. Gravity, the kind that draws respect without effort. Start walking like a man who's tasted betrayal, who remembers the sting, and no longer wastes time explaining himself. He doesn't shout, he doesn't plead, he doesn't perform, 'cause he doesn't need to. Like this message if you've had enough of being liked for your silence, and subscribe. Not to be entertained, but to walk beside men who've chosen a different path. To be unreadable, unshakable, not absolutely impossible to ignore. Because in this world, people don't fear the loudest voice in the room. They fear the quiet one, the one who listens more than he speaks, the one who never justifies himself. Power doesn't always scream. In fact, the most dangerous men in history rarely spoke in force. They wore masks. They smiled. Soft. They waited. And when the time came, it was already too late. Machiavelli understood this like no one else. He wrote that a ruler must appear virtuous even when his actions contradict that image. Why? Because revealing strength too early makes you a target. It strips you of your most powerful advantage, mystery. The moment the world senses your edge, it will try to file it down. It will fear it, resent it, and try to destroy it. And when fear comes too early, it doesn't retreat. It attacks. But the man who seems harmless, humble, even naive, he survives. He's ignored, dismissed, overlooked, and that is his camouflage. While the world underestimates him, he studies them. While they relax, he observes. They speak. Freely, he stays silent, and he sharpens. In the shadows of doubt, he hones instincts sharper than any sword. He learns the map of the battlefield before anyone realizes there is one. You don't need to roar to be feared. You don't need to parade your power to possess it. The wolf doesn't howl before the kill, he stalks in silence. He moves with precision. He waits for the moment that matters. When it arrives, he doesn't ask. He doesn't warn. He executes. That's not the art of deception. It's the art of survival. Too many men think power means domination, that to be feared, you must be seen. But the ones who truly dominate, they operate in shadows. They let the loud ones make themselves known. They let the attention-hungry take the arrows first. And while the world is distracted by spectacle, they move the pieces. Not because they're cowards, but because they're playing a longer game. One of precision. One of inevitable victory. You must learn this. Not every insult requires your fire. Not every enemy deserves your fury. Not every battlefield is worthy of your weapons. Sometimes the most lethal move is to play soft, to let them underestimate you, to let them believe you're not a threat, to let them talk, reveal, relax, because the moment they drop their guard, they give you everything. Their tactics, their fears, their leverage, every hidden motive they carry. You study all of it in silence. And when the time comes, you don't bark, you don't warn, you don't negotiate. You end it cleanly, swiftly, with precision that leaves no room for doubt. Not from anger, not from chaos, but from ruthless control. This is the kind of force Machiavelli respected, calculated ruthlessness. Not outbursts, not blind fury, but a cold, disciplined strike that leaves no fingerprints. Because if you go through life wearing your heart on your sleeve, fully exposed and overly trusting, make no mistake, they will use it against you. Your kindness becomes their tool. Your compassion becomes their test. And if you allow them to shape your identity, they'll build the very prison that contains you. That's why the mask matters. Not as a weapon of deceit, but as a shield of control. Not to fake weakness, but to guide perception. And when they finally discover the strength you've been hiding behind it, it's already too late. Because strength that's unseen is the most dangerous kind. When your power is invisible, it becomes inevitable. So let them misjudge you. Let them whisper about your softness. Let them assume you're harmless. That illusion is your camouflage. It's not your job to correct their assumptions. It's your job to be ready when their guard drops. The sheep may rest easy beside thee. dog. But when the wolf enters the room, silence spreads. Not because he growls, but because he doesn't have to. The most terrifying man is not the one who threatens war. It's the one who can start it with nothing but presence. Strip away the poetry. Remove the songs, the fairy tales, the bedtime lies we've been fed, and what remains beneath all that glitter. Love is fragile. It is soft, romantic, even noble, but it is temporary. Love is a flame that dances beautifully till the wind shifts. Fear, on the other hand, fear is ancient. Fear is primal. It lives in the marrow of your bones. It doesn't need applause or attention. It survives in silence. Machiavelli saw this with surgical clarity. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose." Not because he celebrated cruelty, but because he understood reality. He understood people not as ideals, but as they are. While psychologists write theories, he observed truths. Love, he knew, is conditional. It's performance-based. It depends on how much you offer, how much you sacrifice, how agreeable you remain. Love is a currency that loses value the moment you stop giving. You felt this, haven't you? One wrong move, one unmet expectation, and the love begins to fade, slowly at first, then all at once. But fear? Fear is not emotionally, it's strategic. Fear remembers, doesn't vanish with disappointment, doesn't flinch when you say no. It adapts. People speak differently around those they fear. Their voice is lower, their steps slow. They double-check their words and reconsider their moves. That's not brutality. It's not cruelty. That's control. The man who is loved is cherished until he dares to displease, until he stops performing, until he says enough. And then suddenly he's labeled difficult, selfish, ungrateful. He becomes disposable. But the man who is feared, he's never dismissed. Even in silence, even in absence, he remains a force he is never crossed lightly. His presence doesn't demand the room, it governs it. Not through shouting or domination, but through weight. Tension you can feel, even if he never says a word. Yet today, modern men run from this. Not because it's immoral, but because they are addicted to approval. They fear being misunderstood more than they fear being irrelevant. They want to be liked. They want to be understood. They confuse being loved with being safe, not realizing that often love is simply a leash, beautifully wrapped but binding. All the same, it looks soft, it feels comforting, but it limits. Because love, unlike fear, seeks validation. It constantly asks, "Am I enough?" While fear stands still and demands nothing, fear doesn't need to be explained, doesn't crave applause or reassurance, doesn't beg to be earned over and over again. It simply is. Once it settles into a room, it governs without noise, controls without ever raising its voice. Think about it: who holds the room's attention? The agreeable one, always smiling and saying yes, or the man who rarely speaks, but when he does, the entire room goes silent. That's not charisma. That's leverage. That's the weight of psychological consequence. People don't follow out of affection. They follow because they understand the cost of crossing a line. Loyalty born of fear lasts longer than loyalty born of approval. Why? Because fear has consequence. And this is the paradox no one ever teaches you. If you want to lead, you must be willing to be disliked, to be misunderstood. Because you are cruel, but because you refuse to kneel for validation. Real power isn't theatrical. It doesn't dress itself up in charm or loud declarations. It doesn't rush to be embraced. It moves with calm intention. It walks through the fire without asking if it's allowed. The world quickly forgets the man they once loved, but they never forget the man they feared. So let them whisper. Let them say you've grown cold. Let them wonder if you've changed. That's how you know they feel it, the shift. The gravity in your spine has grown heavier. You're no longer a presence to be tolerated. You're a force to be measured. You're not here to make peace. You're here to command. And true command begins the moment you stop apologizing for your silence and start making others earn your words. There's a man dying every single day, and he doesn't even realize it. You'll spot him easily. He smiles too often, apologizes when he's done nothing wrong, makes room for everyone except himself. He thinks if he's polite enough, kind enough, gentle enough, the world will see his worth, choose him, protect him. But the world doesn't work that way. Machiavelli would call his hope delusion, because in reality, harmlessness isn't a virtue. It's not goodness, it's powerlessness in disguise. Society gives speeches praising the nice guy, but when it's time to make real decisions, he is never in the room. He's reliable until someone more useful appears. He's appreciated until he becomes irrelevant. And why? Because no one respects what poses no threat. No one values what is always available, always giving, always bending. People don't stay, loyal to those who demand nothing. The nice man avoids conflict, avoids boundaries, avoids truth, and in doing so, he avoids himself. He thinks love will redeem him, that his endless giving will finally be seen. But the world doesn't reward invisible men. It forgets them. And when that nice man finally breaks, when the years of quiet sacrifice turn to frustration, when one betrayal to many pushes him to his edge, he snaps. But by then, it's far too late. Because no one fears a roar that comes from someone known only for wagging and whimpers. They don't believe it. They never did. You don't earn respect by being easy to please. You earn it by being impossible to ignore. You earn it by having a line, a limit, a spine. By being the kind of man who is willing to walk away not as a threat but as a principle. You earn respect by saying no, by telling the truth without scanning the room for permission. That's not cruelty. That's sovereignty, the authority over your own self. Machiavelli never admired cruelty for its own sake. What he respected was a man who could act without trembling, without waiting for consensus. A man who could make the cut when cutting was necessary, who could protect himself when the crowd turned. When applause turned into silence and silence, into betrayal. And here's the part that's hardest for the nice man to digest. If you lack the courage to say no, you've already said yes to being used, to being dismissed, to being tolerated instead of valued. You've agreed to play the background role in your own life. So ask yourself, have you been living like a man? Or merely surviving like a mascot? Always smiling, always nodding, always hoping. But hoping for what exactly? Someone to finally notice your sacrifice. Then hear this. You were never meant to be liked. We're meant to be respected. And sometimes, respect is born in the quiet tension of being feared not through violence, but through undeniable presence. Because the man who commands attention doesn't ask for it. He walks in, and the air in the room subtly shifts. Sit up straighter. They choose their words more carefully. That level of presence doesn't come from pleasing, comes from not folding, from no longer explaining yourself, from no longer bowing your head in exchange for praise. Kill the nice guy, not your kindness, but your weakness. Kill the version of you that grins through disrespect, that clings to loyalty out of fear of being alone, that mistakes silence for strength and passivity for virtue. Because make no mistake, people don't follow the harmless. They follow the man who can bite and knows when to. It's not all cruelty is evil. Not all mercy is wise. Sometimes what the world labels as cold is simply the strength to do what others are too fragile to face. Machiavelli never romanticized kindness. He didn't see it as a moral compass to live by. He saw it as a tool valuable only when used with precision. Because there will come moments in a man's life when mercy costs more than resolve. When forgiveness doesn't heal, invites further wounds. When being the bigger person simply makes you the easier target. In those moments, hesitation becomes the boundary between a life of purpose and a life of regret. And that's where most men fall at the altar of indecision. Afraid to leave, afraid to confront, afraid to cut the rope that's already strangling them. They confuse clarity with cruelty, confuse selective ruthlessness with evil. But in reality, the ability to act decisively when everything is on the line, that is not darkness. That is survival. That is power. Because not every wound deserves healing. Not every betrayal deserves a second chance. Not every battlefield calls for dialogue. This isn't about being heartless. It's about being clear. Look closely at the men who rise to power, who are both respected and feared, who are rarely questioned. They're not always loud. They're not desperate to be loved. They are simply decisive. They don't wait for approval to draw a line. They don't broadcast their boundaries. They enforce them. And when the world inevitably pushes back, when that line is tested, as it always is, they don't collapse. They don't waver. They respond once, and that is enough. Because true power is never built on endless ... compromise. It's built on consistency of consequence. It doesn't rest on empty promises or soft hearts. It rests on unwavering standards. Selective ruthlessness doesn't mean being heartless. It means being precise. It's the art of knowing exactly when to be kind, and more importantly, knowing when to be done. When enough is truly enough, it means having the courage to walk away from anything that no longer serves your growth. Even when it's comfortable, even when it's socially praised, even when it hurts. Because here's a truth many refuse to confront. A man who cannot walk away will always be walked over. So ask yourself, honestly, where have you tolerated too much? Still assumes they can cross your boundaries and suffer no consequence. What have you allowed to linger in your life not because you're strong, but because you were afraid? Afraid of being called cruel, afraid of losing love, afraid of being judged for doing what needed to be done. But Machiavelli would tell you this directly: the fear of judgment is the first chain around a man's neck. Because the man who waits for approval before enforcing his lines, he dies explaining, never leading. You are not required to justify your standards. You're not obligated to make your case. You only need to act clearly, fully, and without hesitation when the moment calls for it. And when you do act, tact with your whole being, without guilt, without apology, without a single step backward. That's how you rise, not through fury or outbursts, but through clarity and conviction. Not through chaos, but through control. Selective ruthlessness is not the absence of heart. It is the presence of mind. It is wisdom sharpened by experience. And above all, it is a declaration that your energy, your time, your peace are not free offerings. They are earned, especially by those who mistake your patience for permission. You weren't born to be endlessly forgiving. You were born to decide who stays, what ends, and when it's time to shut the door for good. So if you feel something shifting inside, something colder, sharper, more resolute, don't suppress it. That's not bitterness. That might be the first breath of the man you were always meant to become. Every man reaches a crossroads. One path offers peace. It's warm, familiar, filled with soft smiles, low expectations, and quiet approval. A life designed to be like-safe, quiet, forgettable. A life spent making sure everyone is happy, except yourself. The other path is power. It's colder, harder, lonelier, but it's real. And here's the truth: you cannot walk both. Machiavelli wouldn't sugarcoat this for you. He would look you in the eyes and say, power has a price, and approval, it's never part of the deal. Because choosing power means shaking the world around you. It means drawing firm lines where others prefer the comfort of gray. It means walking alone while others kneel in exchange for belonging. The man who chooses peace at all costs, he avoids conflict, avoids discomfort, avoids being misunderstood. And in doing so, he ends up avoiding himself. He becomes a ghost. In his own story, visible but hollow. Present but never in control. He drifts quietly through rooms he was meant to command. But the man who chooses power, he is seen, he is felt, he is respected, sometimes hated. Yes, but never ignored. He isn't chasing harmony, he's shaping reality. And reshaping reality requires resistance. Resistance from others, and sometimes resistance from within. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that leadership is not born from ... applause. It is forged in solitude. It's not in the noise of the crowd or the comfort of consensus. It's earned in moments when the lights are off, when the room is silent, and the only sound is the echo of your own conviction, in criticism, in rejection, in the discipline to keep walking forward, while others beg you to bend back. So, ask yourself with brutal honesty, are you still chasing approval? Still longing for a peaceful life where no one's offended, no lines are ever crossed, and you're welcomed by everyone? Or are you finally ready to be unapologetically yourself, even if that means walking alone? Because peace, when purchased through silence, isn't peace at all. It's surrender in disguise. The comfort you enjoy today, built on shrinking. Yourself becomes the cage you regret tomorrow. You were not created to be quiet. You were not made to fold. Your clarity will unsettle people, and they will call it cruelty. Your boundaries will be misunderstood, even condemned, as arrogance. And those who once fed off your silence, who profited from your obedience, will be the first to resent your rise. Let them whisper. Let them call you distant. Let them say you've changed, because they're right, you have changed. It means you've stopped orbiting around their comfort and have stepped onto a new path, not of cheap peace, but of brutal freedom. This doesn't mean becoming a tyrant. It means refusing to wait for permission. It means leading without asking. And when the world pushes you, you don't move. They do. That one choice, the decision not to fold, defines every man. Some chase love, endlessly craving to be liked. Others choose to earn respect. One will be remembered, the other forgotten. So choose. Because the man who tries to live in both worlds, who straddles approval and truth, will be devoured by both. You were not born to obey, were never meant to beg for scraps of love, or stand around waiting for someone else to validate your existence. But somewhere along the path, you forgot. Or rather, you were taught to forget. We're told that peace is safer than power, that being liked is more noble than being feared, that loyalty, politeness, and being agreeable would somehow protect you. So you became the dog, loyal, harmless, obedient, always wagging, always waiting, hoping for love, hoping for approval, and in return, you were praised, but never respected, used, but never truly valued. You were fed only when it was convenient, not when you deserved it. Because that is the fate of the obedient man. He is tolerated only until he becomes a burden. Then he is replaced. Machiavelli saw it centuries ago. Wrote that a wise man must know how not to be good when the situation demands it. Because in a world governed by power, virtue without teeth is weakness. Obedience without leverage is nothing short of suicide. But something inside you is waking up, isn't it? You're starting to remember that you were never meant to be small, that your instincts were never wrong. They were just silenced, that your fire wasn't toxic. It was threatening to those who couldn't control it, so now it's time. Time to stop asking. Time to stop folding. Time to stop kneeling for comfort or crumbs. It's time to kill the dog. Not your kindness, but the part of you that confuses. Obedience with safety is the part that thinks silence equals love, that believes suffering in silence earns loyalty. You must end the part of you that pleads, that over-explains, that performs for approval. Because the world does not fear the tame, it fears the unreadable. The unmoved, the undeniable. Let the wolf rise not with noise, not with recklessness, but with a steady control, razor-sharp focus, and unwavering resolve. Imagine a man who smiles, but only when his heart is truly in it, who speaks only when his words carry weight and meaning. A man who can bite when necessary but often doesn't have to, because his very presence acts as a silent, unmistakable warning. The wolf never waits to be chosen, doesn't seek to be loved, never asks to be respected. He simply moves as if all these things are already his by right. And that, right there, is the final transformation, not from weakness into violence, but from invisibility into inevitability, from performing endlessly for approval to embodying a powerful presence, unapologetic and unwavering, from clinging to safety to becoming someone who will be remembered long after the moment has passed. So, if you feel that shift inside, a burning edge, sharp and fierce, one that refuses to be ignored, don't suppress it. Let it live. Let it guide every step you take. Let it replace the part of you that once waited to be saved, that once knelt in hope. You're done kneeling. You're done justifying your worth. You're done hoping that the leash of submission would somehow transform into a crown of respect. This is the edge of your rebirth. Tear off those chains. Stand tall with quiet strength. Speak less and observe more. Strike once with precision and then walk away. Walk as the man who no longer fears being misunderstood because he is too focused on becoming unshakable